Hope. Harmony in Action by Applying Permaculture Principles. Chapter 1, Introduction. 1.1 A New Narrative for a Planet in Crisis. The world is facing an escalating socio-environmental crisis with devastating consequences for both nature and human societies. Global temperatures continue to rise, soil degradation threatens food security, biodiversity is collapsing at an alarming rate, and water resources are becoming increasingly scarce. These are not isolated issues, but symptoms of a system that has exceeded ecological limits. At the same time, deep social inequalities and a growing disconnection from natural processes are fueling instability. Many communities struggle for basic survival, while dominant economic and cultural models operate as if society exists separate from the living systems that sustain it. This disconnect intensifies resource depletion, marginalizes vulnerable populations, and undermines the resilience needed to face an uncertain future. This panorama shows that partial or purely technological solutions, although necessary, are not enough to reverse the trajectory that led us to the current crisis. More than superficial reforms, a profound transformation is required in the way we perceive our role in the world. The interdependence between humanity and nature, for a long time relegated to a secondary level, must regain its central place in any proposal for change. This is where the need for a new narrative appears. A story capable of integrating not only the practical solutions to address the climate emergency, but also the ethical and cultural dimension that until now has remained fragmented. The purpose of this book is to contribute to that renewed narrative through the foundations of permaculture. Emerged in the mid-70s, this philosophy and practice of socio-ecological design is based on the premise that caring for the earth, caring for people, and the fair distribution of resources are unavoidable pillars for building sustainable societies. However, permaculture is not limited to proposing values. It proposes principles of observation and design adapted to each context, promotes the responsible use of energy and resources, and encourages the integration of different knowledge and disciplines. Since its origins, it has been a living approach, capable of drawing on the experiences of rural and urban communities, agroecological science, and the worldview of ancestral cultures, thus creating a body of knowledge resilient to the constant changes that our world is going through. By exploring in these pages the fundamental concepts of permaculture, its history, and the different ways of applying it, a space will be opened to reflect on why it is so urgent to address the aspirational principles of equity, respect, empathy, and reciprocity with the environment we inhabit. Each of the chapters is designed to bring the reader closer to different areas of action, from intergenerational collaboration to community transition, including the inclusion of adult groups with fewer opportunities and the deep reconnection with natural cycles. All of these topics are framed in the idea that transformation is not an exclusive task for specialists, but a process that involves citizens as a whole, with adult education as a cornerstone for change. At this beginning, then, we stand at the threshold of a journey that not only seeks to respond to the socio-environmental crisis with concrete solutions, but also seeks to inspire a change of perspective that allows us to rebuild our relationships with the earth and with those who inhabit it. Throughout the following chapters, a conceptual and practical map will be woven where the theory of permaculture dialogues with transition experiences, design tools, and regeneration strategies focused on the training of adults. In this way, we aspire to provide a firm foundation on which we can build together the new narrative that this historical moment demands so much. YouTube video, Crisis, Hope, and Permaculture. 1.2 A Brief History of Permaculture. From Bill Mollison and David Holmgren to Global Movements. The history of permaculture is closely linked to the questioning of the predominant agricultural and social models in the second half of the 20th century. The term permaculture emerged thanks to the joint work of Bill Mollison and David Holmgren, who in the 1970s from the University of Tasmania began to formulate a proposal based on the observation of natural ecosystems and the search for efficient and regenerative patterns for food production. His reflections were initially reflected in the work Permaculture 1, 1978, a text that established the foundations for an ecological design system that, over time, would extend to multiple areas beyond agriculture, such as architecture, the local economy, and social organization. Bill Mollison's influence was decisive in structuring permaculture as a teaching and dissemination method that combined theory and practice. With his charisma and systemic vision, he traveled to different regions of the world spreading the idea that caring for the earth, caring for people, and sharing surpluses constitutes not only a declaration of ethical principles, but also a way to guarantee long-term sustainability. David Holmgren, for his part, continued to develop and refine the design principles that constitute the backbone of contemporary permaculture, always aiming at the close observation of nature as a starting point for any human intervention. In parallel, other agricultural and philosophical currents exerted an essential influence on the evolution of permaculture. The Japanese farmer and philosopher Masanobu Fukuoka, author of the so-called natural agriculture or no-till agriculture, provided a radical perspective of minimal intervention and deep respect for natural cycles. His book, The Revolution of a Blade of Straw, inspired many to question dependence on chemical inputs and excessive mechanization. This vision found echoes in different places in Europe and America, where farmers and activists adopted methods that sought to reproduce, to the greatest extent possible, the dynamics of wild ecosystems. The work of Amelia Hazelip, creator of synergistic agriculture, was also instrumental in the ramification of the permaculture movement. Hazelip, with direct influence from Fukuoka, promoted a system of permanent terraces and polycultures that seek to preserve soil fertility without resorting to tillage and with controlled use of external resources. Her approach valued the importance of biodiversity and the harmonious interaction between plants, microorganisms, and humans, marking a milestone for those seeking to grow healthy foods without deteriorating ecosystems. Other authors and practitioners, such as Rosemary Morrow, Sepp Holzer, Jeff Lawton, or Toby Hemingway, have been delving into different aspects of permaculture, whether working in extreme climates, disseminating teaching methods, or adapting design principles to urban realities. As the courses and workshops taught by Mollison, Holmgren, and their followers expanded, permaculture began to take shape as an international movement. Organizations, institutions, and networks of educators emerged that adopted these approaches in places as diverse as Australia, Latin America, Africa, and Europe. Over time, permaculture stopped being seen solely as a model of ecological agriculture. It became a comprehensive strategy for designing human settlements and social networks capable of regenerating soils, conserving water, diversifying food production, and, above all, strengthening the sense of community. Today, it is present in countless initiatives, from large-scale rural projects to urban gardens and training centers for adults, confirming its versatility and validity. This diversity of influences, experiences, and cultural contexts is precisely what has given permaculture its dynamic and adaptable character. The ideas conceived by Mollison and Holmgren have been nourished by the sensitivity of Fukuoka, the vision of Hazelip, as well as contributions from dozens of thinkers and activists around the world. Through ethics that prioritize the well-being of the earth and people, and through design principles that transcend geographical borders, permaculture has become a powerful reference for those seeking concrete and hopeful alternatives to current ecological and social challenges. In this process, adult education occupies a central place, since the exchange of knowledge and the active participation of communities are essential to build truly resilient systems. YouTube video, What is Permaculture? By Bill Mollison, David Holmgren. YouTube video, The Story of Permaculture. Documentary, 2024. 1.3. Permaculture Ethics. Care for the Earth. Care for People. Fair Share. The ethics of permaculture constitute the foundation on which all the design principles and methodologies associated with this discipline are based. Unlike many exclusively technical approaches, permaculture arises from a vision that integrates deeply rooted values in mutual care and collaboration with the natural environment. By placing ethical considerations at the center, a broader perspective is promoted that goes beyond simple productive performance or economic efficiency. Thus, any permaculture project, whether rural, urban, community, or individual, should always keep in mind the three central pillars: caring for the earth, caring for people, and sharing equally. The first pillar, caring for the earth, emphasizes that the planet is not merely a backdrop for human activity, but a living, dynamic system upon which all life depends. This care involves respecting natural cycles, preventing ecosystem degradation, and actively promoting the regeneration of soils, forests, water sources, and habitats. It requires shifting away from extractive mindsets and recognizing that natural resources are not just inputs for human consumption, but the foundation of existence for countless species. A permaculture project designed with this ethic in mind does not simply aim to reduce environmental harm. It seeks to restore and enhance ecological health. For example, a degraded piece of farmland can be transformed into a thriving food forest by using agroforestry techniques, reintroducing native plant species, and improving soil fertility through composting and cover cropping. A rainwater harvesting system can not only provide irrigation, but also replenish groundwater reserves and prevent erosion. Even in urban settings, rooftop gardens and vertical farms can reduce heat islands, absorb carbon, and increase local biodiversity. By integrating these regenerative approaches, permaculture ensures that human interventions leave the land in better condition than when the work began, reinforcing the principle that sustainable living is about giving back more than we take. The second pillar, caring for people, underscores the importance of prioritizing human relationships, well-being, and collective empowerment in any permaculture project. It is not enough to respect ecological limits. Projects must also cultivate social environments where individuals have opportunities to learn, contribute, and shape decisions that affect their lives. A truly regenerative society is one where people experience physical and mental well-being, feel a sense of belonging, and have access to the resources necessary for a dignified life. For instance, a community garden can serve as more than just a source of fresh produce. It can be a space for social connection, knowledge sharing, and mutual aid. Elders might pass down traditional farming techniques to younger generations, while newcomers to a community can find a sense of purpose and inclusion by working alongside their neighbors. In the context of adult education, this pillar becomes especially critical, as the exchange of knowledge and cooperative learning can empower individuals to take control of their food production, build resilience against economic hardships, and develop practical skills that benefit both personal and communal well-being. When communities are structured around principles of fairness, inclusivity, and mutual support, they become more resilient to external shocks, whether economic crises, climate change, or social conflicts. The third pillar, sharing with equity, also known as fair share, is based on the understanding that resources and benefits generated by a permaculture design should be distributed fairly among all involved, avoiding hoarding, waste, and exclusion. In a world where vast inequalities exist in access to land, water, and food, this ethic serves as a guiding principle to ensure that regenerative practices do not only benefit a select few, but contribute to broader social justice. This pillar can take many forms in practice. For example, a seed bank project in a rural village might ensure that farmers who cannot afford expensive hybrid seeds have access to heirloom varieties that can be saved and replanted year after year. A permaculture farm might dedicate a portion of its harvest to a local food pantry, ensuring that those in need benefit from the abundance generated. In an educational setting, knowledge exchange networks can be established where people from different backgrounds contribute their skills, some teaching about soil restoration, others about natural building techniques, while others bring expertise in cooperative economics. Fair share also extends to reinvesting profits or surplus energy into the same ecosystem that sustains a project, ensuring that regenerative cycles continue. This could mean planting additional trees, supporting the development of new community projects, or funding scholarships for those who wish to learn and apply permaculture principles but lack financial resources. By embedding the three ethics, caring for the earth, caring for people, and sharing with equity into action, permaculture moves beyond theory and becomes a transformative force that reshapes both landscapes and societies. These pillars do not function in isolation. Rather, they reinforce one another in a continuous cycle. Ecological restoration enhances human well-being. Strong communities create the conditions for equitable resource distribution, and fair sharing ensures that both people and the planet continue to thrive for generations to come. Together, they form an ethical framework that should guide every permaculture project, not as a rigid ideology, but as a living, adaptable compass for decision-making. Whether selecting plants, designing water systems, or structuring collaborative governance, these principles shape each choice, ensuring that sustainability is not merely an abstract goal, but an integrated, tangible practice. By embracing these commitments, permaculture distinguishes itself as a holistic approach capable of addressing the environmental, social, and cultural challenges of our time in a meaningful and regenerative way. The ethics of permaculture invite us to view the relationship between humans and nature as a profound and sacred bond, while emphasizing that every project or initiative should actively contribute to regeneration and equity within the social fabric. Caring for the earth and for people requires more than passive acknowledgement. It demands a conscious effort to ensure that human actions restore rather than deplete. Every footprint left on the environment carries consequences, and if human activity consistently takes more than it gives, ecological and social imbalances will inevitably deepen. To counter this, permaculture advocates for approaches that go beyond sustainability, aiming instead for restoration and reciprocity. A major obstacle to achieving this balance lies in the deeply entrenched anthropocentric worldview that has shaped modern thought. This perspective places humanity at the center of the narrative while reducing the Earth to a passive backdrop, an idea rooted in Enlightenment philosophy. During the 19th century, the notion of the modern human took shape, defined in opposition to nature and reinforcing a dualistic worldview that continues to influence contemporary ideas of subjectivity, freedom, and democracy. However, this separation has had profound and lasting consequences. Societies have structured themselves around human interests while ignoring the planetary processes that sustain life. Traditional democratic models, for instance, often fail to consider environmental interdependence, focusing solely on human needs while neglecting the broader ecological systems upon which those needs depend. Permaculture challenges this limited perspective by advocating for systems that recognize human and ecological well-being as inseparable. It shifts the focus from extraction and short-term exploitation toward a framework of reciprocity, where every action contributes to the regeneration of both communities and ecosystems. True progress is not measured by economic expansion or resource consumption, but by the ability to heal damaged landscapes, restore biodiversity, and create thriving social structures. This holistic perspective fosters universal compassion, not just for those directly involved in a project, but for the wider web of people, species, and landscapes connected to it. This inclusive approach to care extends beyond the immediate participants of a given initiative. A community garden, for example, does more than improve soil health and increase biodiversity. It also provides environmental education for visitors, fosters collaboration between different neighborhood groups, and promotes food sovereignty beyond its physical boundaries. By integrating regenerative design principles, such projects generate ripples of positive impact that reach far beyond their initial scope. This broad vision is crucial for developing long-term solutions where production and consumption are balanced, or better yet, where the net impact on the environment is a gain rather than a loss. The core ethics of permaculture, caring for the earth, caring for people, and sharing resources equitably, do not function in isolation but form a mutually reinforcing system. When projects are designed with a regenerative mindset, these three pillars support and strengthen one another. Prioritizing ecosystem health improves human well-being by creating cleaner, more productive environments. Strengthened communities, in turn, develop support networks that facilitate resource sharing and biodiversity conservation. Even small actions, composting, reducing waste, exchanging knowledge, or sourcing from local markets, contribute to closing cycles and ensuring that more is given back than taken. In this sense, true sustainability is not about maintaining the status quo, but about expanding a project's beneficial influence beyond its initial context. Implementing permaculture ethics consistently means fostering a state of abundance in which surplus is not hoarded but redirected into new initiatives and shared with the wider community. This comprehensive approach ensures the long-term viability of practices that care for both people and the planet. As regenerative designs continue to nourish and sustain their foundations, the ethical interdependence of the three permaculture principles remains dynamic and resilient, growing stronger with each cycle of renewal and expansion. YouTube video, The Ethics of Permaculture. YouTube video, Permaculture Basics, Part 1 of 4, Origins and Ethics of Permaculture. Web permacultureprinciples.com/ethics.